Okay, all right. So, hello everyone. I want to get started by asking you how you got involved in this project. Like, what drew you to Marvel Comics for Marvel 616?
It was a series that was brought to us by Marvel. It was something that was an idea that came from a guy named Dan Silver, who was at ESPN and then was at Marvel and now is at Disney Plus. And in the best way, it was an idea of creating a documentary series that quite literally looked at the world outside, your window, and by the nature of using the format of documentary, exploring the different avenues where Marvel interacts with the real world. And so we basically took that approach of trying to find as many different stories where those things interact. And a big part of that also was treating this as an anthology series where every single episode is completely standalone and different from one another and is helmed by a different filmmaker. And that then, led us to working with people like Gillian and Alison.
Yeah, so I had worked with Dan Silver previously when he was at ESPN. So when he conceived of the series and partnered with Supper Club and Jason, he suggested that we meet and discuss a potential episode. And so that was my entry into this project.
Yes, and I basically got a call from Jason and Brian McGinn over at Supper Club, who's a good friend of mine. I guess my episode had just come out that I had directed for Community, or Jesus. It's like looking at Gillian, I can't talk about any other show. I just directed an episode of Glow, and basically I got a call talking about the Marvel Spotlight program and asking about my experience with high school theater and kind of seeing what my connection was with that, which is strong. And that was sort of how I got involved.
So, what is something that you discovered during your work on the series that really surprised you?
I think for me, it was the historical aspect, finding out about all the women who had worked in comics as writers and artists and editors in decades past that I was unaware of. And so that was really cool to discover their stories and be able to speak to someone like Trina Robbins, who's done so much research in that area. So she could both speak about her experience working in the comic book industry and then also about all of the historical work that she's done. So that was really exciting.
And for me, I guess it was really about the nuance and depth of Marvel characters. And I mean, first of all, just learning so much about the Marvel Spotlight program, which I didn't know existed, which the Marvel Spotlight plays are a series of one-act plays that were commissioned by Marvel, written by playwrights about characters in the known Marvel universe in their teen years, written for high schools to be performed by high schools. This initiative is so brilliant because as the teacher, Courtney Kyle, in our episode figured out immediately that kids love Marvel. It's a great tool in getting a lot of students more involved in high school theater, which can be beneficial in so many ways beyond, aspirations of wanting to be a professional actor. So I guess I was just impressed by the program itself that I hadn't known existed. And then these characters, Kamala Khan, we followed the Ms. Marvel play, also Squirrel Girl and Squirrel Girl Goes to College. These are two Marvel characters that I was really not familiar with going into this process. And they blew me away, not least because of the connections that the students themselves were making to these characters and how much they were learning about themselves through the process of playing these characters. So I think it broadened my mind as to how deep a connection there is there.
I can't narrow it down to any one thing, but that's by the nature. I'm lucky enough to have, obviously worked on all these episodes. Things from truly digging into what the cosplay community is and what that actually means to people who cosplay, uncovering things like Japanese Spider-Man, which has been elusive for decades from most audiences outside of Japan, to things like there's a lot that Paul Scheer uncovers throughout the course of his episode. Just that one alone is built upon discovery. So, it's kind of like, it's all of it.
So I'm going to be like, full disclosure, Alison, Gillian, your episodes were the ones that made me cry. Like, I definitely had like an emotional response to the end of those episodes. So I'm curious.
I cried watching Gillian's episode and my own episode.
So I'm curious, whose story impacted you the most and why?
I find it very difficult to pinpoint one student. The 5 students that we outlined, I think all of their stories, while being so specific to them, there was an overarching theme of confidence building and self-empowerment, which is something that even as an adult I can relate to. And as I venture into different aspects of my own industry, I think I'm constantly facing those same fears and self-doubt and, self-worth and all of that kind of stuff. So all of the kids' stories, I think, resonated with me. If anything, there were so many more stories that we just didn't have time to fit into this one episode. At one point we pitched doing a separate series just about the Brandon High School students. But we did narrow it down to one episode. But yes, I think all 5 of the students that we feature in my episode each had a deep impact on me. Deep impact.
I think I got to spend the most time with Nyla and Sana. And so I really loved getting to know both of them. And I mean, like Alison said, it's so hard to choose because, I felt like everyone we interviewed said something really profound and moving. But it was really a special experience to get to spend time with Nyla and Sana.
All right. So, and this is another question for everybody, but what do you hope viewers take away from your episode once they've seen it, once it's all said and done?
To me, I think it's something in the world of connection. I think we follow these 5 students that are so different, but they are all so connected to these characters in the Marvel universe. From what I've seen of a couple of the other episodes, Marvel itself is so massive, and you realize that it's this great connective tissue that is reaching, across an entire globe, and it stretches, it touches so many different kinds of people from so many different walks of life and generations and things like that. To me, I think it would be great if people could watch the episode and just say to themselves, wow, I really relate to this person and we like this thing. And that person's so different from myself. I didn't realize that we're actually so connected in this way.
Well, maybe because, my process of directing this was a real discovery for me, discovering my own love and connection to comics, that maybe an audience who hasn't really read a lot of comics before will watch this series as a whole and realize that there is a character there. There's a comic there. There's an artist that they're going to love, or a writer or an editor's whose work they love. And that kind of like myself, you come away with a connection and your own fandom.
I think that's the thing for the series on a whole. Really, I think for us, I think the takeaway really, hopefully, is that there's something here for everyone. You don't have to be a diehard Marvel fan. I wasn't when we started making the series. So there's multiple entry points and there's different things for people to connect with. It's not even necessarily about the comics in a great way. It's like what you take away from someone like Allison's is really you're getting a glimpse into what a high school looks like today and what kids struggle with. At the same time, also, like Gillian's episode covers the idea of why it's important to elevate women and give them opportunities and watch them grow within the workplace. So there's much more depth, I think, than just Marvel and characters and storylines.
All right, I think I have time for just one more question. I'm sure this is not the first time you've been asked this, nor will it be the last, but if after you've learned more about Marvel Comics, is there a particular character that you could see yourselves playing at some point down the line? Just like dream character.
I find it very difficult to answer this question because my experience on this series was so laser focused on Ms. Marvel and Squirrel Girl. And also now I sort of have trouble not seeing, Brie and Maddie playing those characters. So it's I have to develop a better answer for this because you're right. I think we're going to get it a lot.
Well, I have a untitled, we don't know who the characters are, but Allison and I are starring in a Marvel film together. It's a two-hander. So you can go and find what's a two-hander for two female characters to lead a film. And that's the one that we're doing.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you guys so much for your time. Good luck with the rest of the launch for the series.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.